Great, well, thanks very much. And we've got another question, which I'm now going to move on to. So the institution, let me be very clear, is absolutely committed to supporting the LGBTQ plus community, both within the institution, but of course more widely. And one way of doing that is to support our community is to mainstream the use of pronouns at Heriot-Watt. But Campbell, are we doing enough, and are we doing it quickly enough?
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Mark. We absolutely need to support the ability for students to reflect their preferred names and pronouns within our systems, and also for that information to flow to where it needs to flow as well. So having it sitting within a system without staff who are student facing being able to access that and being able to to address students in the manner they would prefer is would be a wasted opportunity. I think, to be honest, we are a bit behind the curve. We currently collect preferred names within our registration system, and that does flow into our virtual learning environment as well, the VLE. But we are revitalising our student systems at present, and we are reviewing the student enrolment process, which will go live in September of 2023. And the addition of pronouns as part of that work, as will feed into the VLE, the Canvas virtual learning environment as well. So this is a piece of work that we are prioritising for next academic year. And also the information in the older in the current system is only collected at the point of enrolment or re-enrolment. So we're looking at making this more of a self-service feature whereby people can go in and update that information as and when they feel they would like to. So there's a lot happening over the summer. So I think we're moving from a position where I was not comfortable to one where we're certainly meeting the needs of our student population. So there's a lot of work going on in that space just now.
Yeah. And if I understand correctly, Campbell, I mean, this is where we're working on Banner maybe, or systems like that.
Yeah,
that a legacy in some sense, and they've not moved on with the times, but now the new version will actually catch up. Is that right?
Yeah, Banner's the student record system, and there's a major system revitalisation project, and it's hitting the enrolment process now. So we will see those benefits. So there's a lot of work going on internally to streamline and update that process, and it will go live in September. And the key thing is it's how it feeds out as well into the VLE, so that academic staff then, without having to go into the core student record system, are able to easily access preferred names and pronouns, so that they can reflect those when they're addressing students within the teaching and learning environment.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And Paul, let me just pick up with you. I mean, to what extent are our academic colleagues and indeed staff more generally, in your experience, actually aware of the need to be conscious of preferred names and pronouns?
I think the honest answer is, of course, it's variable. I mean, we have made significant progress in this area. I think it's very reflective of society as a whole, I would say, as a very general statement. I've not been aware of particular issues, but I echo what Campbell just said. The importance is where you get the information so that you can act on it. So you need to be able to respond to individual students if they raise it with you. And I can confidently say staff do that and recognise the importance of that, of course. But to proactively do it, to be seen, to be put in the effort into do it. So how do you get access to that record system? It's quite complex at the moment, and it's not as smooth as it should be. And we need to work on that to provide not just the staff with the confidence that they are addressing in the correct way, but the students with the confidence that we take change seriously. And one of the key things that Campbell mentioned was that if a student does subsequently change a pronoun during an academic year, that should be flagged to staff so that they know to respond to it in due course and time. And that's really key. So I think the changes brought in will really, really help that.
Yeah. Good, thanks, Paul. Molly, what do you think we can do better from a student perspective?
I think that, as Campbell mentioned, sometimes we can be behind the curve on certain things when it does come to pronouns and preferred names and just I suppose change in general. And I'm not quite sure how we get ahead of that, but maybe having more of a listening ear and as Scott said, diversifying our rep system so that there are people who are affected by these matters and feel comfortable enough to come forward and speak on it and say, well, I'd really prefer it if I could put my pronouns on Canvas. Yeah, I don't want to rehash what other people have said, but
and one of the things that I find frustrating is on Teams you can't change, you can't put pronouns. So I use pronouns, and I do that when I use Zoom, but I can't do it with Teams, and I find that very frustrating actually. So we've still got some work to do, I think. And it's not as if Teams, which is produced by Microsoft, by the way, should be behind the curve on that, but because they do update it routinely, usually not always competently in my experience. But anyway, there we are. Carol, what's your experience of this in terms of because of course you and your colleagues interact with students routinely and so forth. How do you see this?
I think it brings a different layer of stress for the students, to be honest, because they're working between the different systems. And as you're just saying, you can have the experience of working in one sort of media mode and you can update the information, and then you go into a different system and it's not there. And I think it's just such a big thing. Often coming to university is a time of change for people, and it's not unusual for people to use this as an opportunity to really think, and gender identity, is clearly a big issue, and people want to be known for who they are and to have the space to really put that into practice in a way that might not have been possible before coming to university. And so I really think that in itself is such a big process. The last thing we want to be doing is actually making that more complicated for people. And if we could just have the systems that spoke to each other, so that in having made that decision and kind of building up the courage to do something about it, you didn't have to then go and do it again and do it again and then have to go and ask somebody and explain it all. I think that level of acceptance and inclusion should be about saying, this is the system, this is why you do it, and you only do it once.
So what I'm hearing is that we're very keen, as I said at the beginning of the introducing this particular question, as an institution, very keen to actually do the right thing here. Some of the systems are getting in the way of us actually doing that, but we are actually investing quite a lot of money now in these systems to address them. And of course, then we also have all of the support network around students to try and support them through that as best as we possibly can. Georgia, I mean, I don't know whether you wanted to make some comments before we move on at all, as your role as VP for Wellbeing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously a lot of it has already been covered, but just in addition to what's already been said, the move to Canvas as the virtual learning environment is actually a really good one in terms of being able to select students' display pronouns. It's just not necessarily clear how to do it. It is a simple process. It's just not necessarily explained to students this is how it's done. And that, I think, can be a piece of work both from the university and the student union side of things on raising awareness of how to do that, because it's very, very simple. I was approached by the LGBT+ Society about extending the pronoun offering on Canvas, and I am currently in talks with information services and have drafted a policy proposal for LTOC to extend that. And it is currently a drop-down selection of pronouns. It can't be something where students can just type in anything in there, and that has been something I've had to explain a couple of times. But once you do explain it, it's quite evident why that would be a bit of a problem. But at the moment, the offering is good, and we're just proposing that we extend it to add a couple of more options and combinations of pronouns off the back of some student feedback that we've had. But I was really pleased that students felt that they could come to me and ask me to do that, and I'm hopeful that it'll be a smooth process and that it'll be in place by the new academic year.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that's a really good example of where the Students' Union is working with the university to effect change, and I think that's such a crucial thing. And Scott, of course, we have the student partnership agreement, don't we? Which and I mentioned, of course, as you've been re-elected, and congratulations on that. You'll be entering into that discussion soon around that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Scott, that process?
So, I mean, so for those that don't know, the Student Partnership Agreement is something we do every year. The Sports Union came on board this year, so it's our student representation bodies in the UK, Dubai, Malaysia, the Sports Union, and then we have theme leads from wellbeing, community, academic as well. And essentially, you know, we've changed the time period because it used to run when the full-time officers came in June, but we tried to make it January to January so we can, when there's work like this being done, it doesn't get dropped as a legacy project. We're making it January to January, so when, you know, we're at step 4 of a 10-step process, we can make sure that the new officer team can follow this through. But briefly on the sort of systems, and until we get to that point where it is a simpler process, I think it's just about transparency and communication. You know, the university is not doing it on purpose. So it's when they are finding it difficult or there are slow processes or hurdles, it's making sure that the students know that we are trying to fix it. It's letting them know what we're doing to fix these problems, so that there's not that, or it calms down that initial anger that might be there or an initial hurt that might be there.